So my question to you as an expertise is, and for our listeners to know, like, when should people be introduced to therapy? Because I personally
feel like straight out the womb. As soon as they
literally
pat the baby's butt.
One.
I never even had a therapist until I was going through a breakup.
No,
and
I feel like
that was my first time like talking to a therapist and couples therapy. Mm-hmm. So I want to know, like, when should therapy be introduced? How often should people
like go and see one or something?
See one, or like when should you see one, or like, because I feel like we go when it's too late.
Yeah, well,
we go when it's like
discourse.
We go when like, have you guys seen Olympia's Falling?
I think I did see that.
Or London is Falling. Like, we go. It's literally the fucking like
when the world is ending.
Yeah.
I agree. I
and
feel
it's like fix it. The house is burning. Put it back together.
Yes.
I mental health is becoming more and more medicalized, right? So you're seeing it in more offices and hospitals,
conversations,
in more conversations. And so I agree that I think it should be like having a family practice doctor, right? You have a doctor from the time you're born. You go see him. You get your shots. You get your checkups and all that stuff. So I do believe that from the time you're really little, you should learn this stuff, because here's the thing. If you're not an expert in mental health, how do you know how to teach your kid how to mourn? Mm-hmm. How does everyone just know how to do that? Yeah. And so I think that it would be really important. So I in an ideal world, yes, I wish that you come out the womb and it's like, here's your therapist. Any problems you have over the course of your life, please go see this individual. And if they retire, then there's someone else that will come step in. That's like ideal. But like for the real world, right? The world that we actually live in, you should go if you start to notice any major changes in your life. Like if you're noticing that, like, because with all this COVID stuff, if you're noticing that you're sad more than you're used to being, if you notice that you're angry more than you're used to being, if you notice like you're staying inside, obviously everyone's been inside a little bit more than they're accustomed to, but if you're like finding yourself being afraid, leaving the house. So any changes, you're eating more to the point where you're gaining weight, or you're eating less to the point where you're gaining weight without trying to, then that's like, okay, well, something's going on with me. Maybe I should reach out. Right? And so there's a number of different ways you can reach out. There are like apps that do therapy now. Like your doctor's office can refer you to therapy. There's therapyforblackgirls.com. There's Psychology Today. I love Therapy for Black Girls because it's hard to find a black therapist. And for some of us, we do want someone that just kind of gets a little bit of that without us kind of having to like be cultural czars. Mm-hmm. Like I've had a lot of really wonderful white therapists, because I've had a million therapists over the course of my life, because therapists do go to therapy. The therapist I've been working with now, I've probably been with her for like 10 years.
Oh, wow.
My therapist is Dr. May. She's a black woman out in Atlanta, and I'm talking about, she'll break you down to your core and build you right back on up. Like, I was like, she was really, really good. But can you tell our listeners where we can find you?
That's it. You can find me at AllisonHicks.com. That's spelled real wacky. ALLYCINHICKS.com. Allison Hicks on Instagram. I'm there.
So, okay. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a little out of order. But I recently I have a new primary care doctor, right? Mm-hmm. And they were asking me all these questions that I was not prepared for. Like about my dad's history, my mom's history. And this is not conversations they have with you, right? I do know my dad was in... I don't even know what you call it, but like a clinic, because he had like a mental breakdown. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And they told us, like, my mom was like, oh, he left, until we were like older. And it was just like, she yelled it to him in an argument is the only reason I know. So my doctor was like, okay, do you have a therapist and a psychiatrist? And I was like, I watch Frasier, talk to you. And then I have like a spiritualist. So I'm like, what do you mean a psychiatrist? Like, no, it's two different ones.
One write drugs and one don't.
Mm-hmm. There's levels to this shit.
So I was just like, but then
my therapist was like, I was so depressed. She was like, I'm going to have to refer you out because you need going through postpartum. Yeah. I was so far down this rabbit hole of postpartum depression that she said, she told me like a month later, she said, Ming, I'm so proud of you, because I honestly if you didn't have any turnaround within the next 30 days, she showed me on her list that she was like, I was going to have to refer you out because I was getting kind of nervous for you, that you needed somebody who can write you some prescriptions for antidepressants.
So this is what, like, my doctor was just like, so take my phone number. I was like, why? Because after we had the conversation, I just was being very honest. And he's writing more and more. And I'm like, what are you writing? And he was like, so how are you feeling? Do you have someone here? I was like, okay. He was like, well, I have a psychiatrist. I said, no, I have a therapist and a spiritualist. He said, okay, I have a psychiatrist.
They write the drugs.
Yeah. And I was just, it was just a lot, because it was at a point I'm just like, and it takes me back to what we were originally saying, like, and it made me mad all over again with like my parents and everything else. Because we could have had and did this 15 years ago and I could have been fine. Where now I'm going through the process and I just feel like mentally I'm like underdeveloped with my emotions and everything else, because you're just now dealing with it and you're just now catching up with, like, how do you deal with taking the bits and pieces to figure out like how to fix your life, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. One, I would say have grace for yourself.
Yeah.
There's nowhere we're supposed to be. And when you start to hear yourself saying things like, I should be here, I should be there, then like realize that you're kind of, you might be looking at this playbook, this idea that there's this rule book of where people at a certain age or at a certain point in their life or at a certain income level where they should be, right? It just doesn't exist. You are where you are. And I've been, over the course of the pandemic in particular, I've been helping people and talking to people a lot about grace.
Yeah.
Because we're so hard on ourselves, because everyone has all these ideas of what they want to come out of COVID with and what they don't want to have and all this stuff. So that's the first thing I would say to you is like, be patient with yourself, love yourself, and accept, going back to the idea of radical acceptance, accept the fact that this is where you are right now. And because you're here right now, it's a beautiful space. It might not feel good. It might feel absolutely horrible, but it's all right.
Yeah.
And you'll if you don't want to take medication, you can find, you can still have a psychiatrist and not take medication. You can talk to them about it. You can have your therapist, you can have your coach, you can have your spiritualist. You can do all of that, but don't make it mean, it doesn't mean anything about you.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think sometimes people are like, well, what, so does it mean something's really, really wrong with me? Like, you think I'm going to kill myself? What do you think? And that's not always the case. Sometimes medication, some people prefer medication with talk therapy.
Yeah.
And so don't judge yourself. It's okay. Hit me up.
I'm getting your number.
She gonna hit you with them texts too. Like I do. I be like, girl,
look what he sent me. Look what he just texted me. What does this mean? Why is he sending me this?
I sent you some screenshots. I'd be like, what the fuck does this mean? She'd be like, well, hello first, Karen. How are you doing? Let's cut the chit chat.
But you know what? That's what I really loved about my black woman therapist, Dr. May, is that she let me get straight to the meat and potatoes on day one.
No, that's
I
Allison.
don't want to fucking talk about. I want to get to the issue. Why I am here. I want to talk about that today.
Let's get to 8. And not like
we can work back about my childhood, blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about why I'm here.
Yeah. I believe it comes out. It comes out.
Let's talk about it today. I need some type of advice today.
She's gonna give you she gave me a form and was like, I'm like, listen, I'm broken. We passed this. I know it's like watching the words and how we express, but I just knew what it was. I was like, I'm being truth. I'm past this paper.
I need some advice.
I'm not having any of those papers.
I was like, I'll be screenshotting comments. I'd be like, what the fuck is he talking about? What is this? Like, I'm sad today. What is there to really get to it? And that's why I absolutely love and I recommend it's fine to have other races, but just for me, just being a black woman, I feel really comfortable talking to you. And it's just even with my psychiatrist too, I told him, I was like, refer me to somebody who's going to understand me. I know how blunt I am, the convo, straight to it. If I send a text message, I don't want you to be offended. If I say it in a certain way, I don't want to seem abrasive. My Jerseyan comes out, where it's just even with her, and it's my spiritualist get it. I'm like, oh God, the fuck. And Jonathan Ming got me into him. He just be, y'all understand. So it's my trifecta.
It's your village. It's your village. And I think that that's to me a big takeaway is you got to have your village. You got to figure out where you get fed when it comes to family, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to anyone. Blood might be thicker than water, but which one do you drink? You got to have people in your life that feed you, that nourish you, whether they be
I like
your
that. Blood
therapist.
may be thicker than water, but which one do you drink?
right?
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm giving them for Christmas. Like, you do gift cards? That's what you, yeah, all family members. Like, oh, what you give me for Christmas? Therapy, gift card. Therapy. You do gift cards?
Sure. Okay, before we get out of here, could you give us 3 tips for our listeners about mental health and wellness and
to help them, especially during like
COVID.
This COVID. I know it's just it's like kind of quick, but 3 things that they can do and add to their everyday life because you know, I guess financial issues or timing or things they may not be able to go out.
Because my one friend is a divorce lawyer. She says she's never.
Oh, people are getting divorced. It's very real right now. Like, it's the other side of COVID is about to be real different. So one, I would say sit in silence a little bit more often. And I don't mean you have to be at the top of a mountain for 5 hours. I mean, when you wake up, you know, don't turn your phone on. Don't look at the news. Take a few minutes just to be with yourself, to listen to yourself, to make plans, be present. Silence can be scary, but learn to sit in a little bit of silence. 2, I would say get a little bit active because when you release endorphins, it does actually elevate your mood. So even if that's like a walk down the street, if that's a walk around the park, get more active because physical health is mental health. Mental health is physical health. They impact one another. So keep that in mind. And then the 3rd is don't be ashamed or worried about getting help. If you need it, reach out, find it.